And welcome everyone with this chill, relaxing music in the background to FPH Weekly here on twitch.tv/full press coverage, twitter.com/full press NHL, youtube.com, everywhere. We're everywhere. Mike Straw, Chris Wassel, Elaine Shircliff joining us for the second week in a row. No Jim. Jim didn't like us this week.
Rude.
Damn it, Jim.
So Jim doesn't like us. Last week was a heavy show. This week I fully expect to be the same because, it's just things don't seem to be getting any better in the world of the NHL because the league has a major problem. And we'll get into to what the next steps need to be. But last week we talked about Chicago. We're not going to talk about Chicago this week because there's way more to talk about. We're going to start, and we're just going to get right into this. Today it came out that the Pittsburgh Penguins had reached settlement with the Scaldies, and that both sides were happy about. Or quote, according to a statement from Scaldi's lawyers, that it was a satisfactory conclusion for all parties involved. I don't buy that, but whatever. If they want to move on, they want to move on. That's what it is. We're just going to start right away. Aaron, I'm going to start with you. When you saw this morning that a settlement was reached, were you surprised that this isn't going to court? Were you surprised that, I don't know if it, I don't want to say the Penguins are getting off scot-free because who knows the terms of that settlement, but it kind of feels like the Penguins are getting off kind of light.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I could never be on actual live television because when someone calls me not my name, I can't help but laugh.
Did I do that?
She went full giggle. It's true. It was like you read the teleprompter, Mike.
It's fine. It's fine. I just thought it was funny.
What did I do wrong? Now I want to know.
You called me Aaron, which is fine.
Oh my God. I am so sorry.
So close,
the screen,
Elaine.
clearly.
Oh my God. I am a dick.
It's so close.
Aaron, because his wife's name is Aaron, and Aaron and
We
Elaine.
have the same initials.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
right
I'm
there.
smart. I'm smart. Oh, Jesus. Here, let's just zoom in on the face of disappointment here.
Whoa.
Wah,
It's
wah,
too
wah,
close
wah.
up.
Wah. I'm so sad.
Listen, a true pro would have totally let that slide.
Oh, and
true.
None of us are.
I
like it when it's called out.
Okay, and I was laughing so hard I forgot your question.
When you saw that the settlement came, do you feel kind of like the Penguins maybe are going to get off easy because there was a settlement reached?
Yes, because I don't know how many people who have access to the Penguins are going to continue to pursue this story. Because just because there's like a settlement that happened doesn't mean that changes don't need to be made, and it doesn't mean that nothing happened. I mean, you see like the replies and people are like, oh, see, everything's fine. Bill Guerin's fine. He's absolved of whatever happened. And it's like, no, that's literally not what a settlement means.
That's not how this works.
It's not how any of it works.
So yeah, I feel like they're going to get off. I feel like the whole situation in general is just going to get off easy. Everyone involved, just because people that have the access, I don't know if they're going to continue to ask or bring it up. So,
Chris, do you think that? I mean, that's probably an easy answer. Do you think this is something that they should continue to bring up? Granted, Bill Guerin's not there. They can't really ask the management that's in place there too much about Guerin. Should he still be questioned? Yes, of course. But do you think this is something like with Mario still there? We've talked about it off the air. Like, he's no saint in all this. Like, I feel he needs to come out and they need to demand. Like, if I'm covering the Penguins, they need to keep going and finding out what's going on with Mario and why he isn't coming out and talking about this. Like the allegations that they were told, be quiet, just keep your mouth shut. And like was this given from the ownership down to keep them from having a black eye, which obviously it's on them now, but is this something that you see, or how do you feel about the idea that reporters around the team might not continue to ask about it?
To be honest, I mean, they're probably more worried about Pickle Fest than, this matter, period. It's sad, but it is true. I mean, most of the beat writers there want to keep their phony baloney jobs. And the reality of it is that now that there's a settlement, this is sort of not all of them, but most of them will just go on about their daily business and report on the Penguins as if nothing really happened. When the reality is, if anybody has even read a few like tiny little notes on the whole matter in its entirety, you will realize that this is a pretty sinister list of allegations that were reported. I mean, this
100%.
is next level bad stuff. I mean, there's no sidestepping this at all. I mean, the Scaldies had like a list, and then on top of it, he's let go because of COVID. Okay, now to be fair, I've seen this happen a few times with different people in the last year that were let go because of COVID, and it was just an absolute load of crap.
And that bothers me. Like, we talked about the Blackhawks last week and the excuses given for people being ousted and hearing like, oh, he was let go because of COVID reasons. No, he wasn't. They're going to use that as the front, but everybody knows like it's not. And you talked about like people getting back to carrying on like business as usual. I was messaging everyone earlier today. I was messaging Chris. I was messaging Ian, our boss. I was like, I don't know what to do. We especially in my case, like I'm contracted to host this show every week. I don't feel comfortable, and we talked about like talking about like the biggest news story from a hockey standpoint over the past week was Eichel finally being traded. I don't want to talk about it. I don't feel right talking about it. I'm not at a point where, and I've had people on Twitter, because we talked about Twitter in our mentions last week, not the brightest group coming at you, about like, just move on. Like you talk hockey, like do your job. It's like my job, like this is bigger to me than my job of talking about the Buffalo Sabres or the NHL as a whole from a hockey standpoint. I don't want to. I don't want this to ever be swept under the rug, but I'm in that like weird position. Like eventually I know I'm going to have to get back to talking about it on the ice. When that is, I don't know. And I know I'm not the only one. And this is to either of you. Like, what do you think about those who do just get back to covering hockey? Like it's tough to get to that point, right?
I think also we have to remember that they don't own their site. They aren't their editors for the most part. Unfortunately, when it comes to the actual articles that they put out, not everyone has like Ian, who's like, yeah, Elaine, come up from the AHL and write about all of these things that are going on in the NHL. Go for it. And just lets me have that free reign. And I've put out 0 AHL articles, I think, since like the middle of October. So not everyone has that. And so I'm trying to be very understanding of that. But I think there should still be some sense of reporting it, at least from like a Twitter or their own, like an own blog standpoint, or I don't know, something of that nature. I mean, like Rick West had put out a tweet today thanking TSN because they're allowing him to cover all of these horrible things that are happening in the NHL right now. And I wish more people had, bosses who were okay with that as well. But at the same time, we also still have to be able to balance that these games are happening. Because also like the fans are, I don't want to say part of the problem, but like it's part of the problem. Like they're still watching the games. They're still consuming so much of the content. They are still wanting to hear about all of these games from these teams that are having these issues. So it's hard, like it is hard to balance that, especially when you don't have the backup.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, being unfortunately like thrown into a multitude of sports, and God knows how many awkward and strange moments over the last year. And I mean, you could almost run like an NHL media card bingo of the bad things that have happened over the last year, and just extend it to like the AHL, ECHL, etc. But look, you hate to say this, and you hate to borrow from another sport, but Rocky Balboa said it best: "It's not over. It's far from over, unfortunately." And that makes it the most difficult part of all of this.
Yeah.
Is we in the back of our heads, no matter how hard we're trying to report on the sport at hand, there was always something in the back of our conscience that says, "My God, what the hell did we miss?"
And it's kind of gross. Like, we're not in there day in, day out in the league. Like, consciously and morally, like ethically, hearing these stories come out, and it's just how do these things not come out right away? I get it, like some people are scared to come forward. I feel sad with all these people like not coming out until years later. And we're gonna transition, I guess, to the Anaheim Ducks, because another day, another story. Actually, before we get to that, we're going to go back to Chicago, because you brought up Rick Westhead, Elaine. And there was something you and I were talking about earlier that really pissed us both off.
Yes. Yes.
The NHL, I'm quoting Westhead's tweet. The NHL has informed a lawyer for John Doe number 2 in the Brad Aldrich case that the league will not cover any costs of counseling or therapy for him and his family. Now, John Doe number 2 is all intents and purposes the minor that was alleged to have been assaulted by Brad Aldrich. An NHL employee wrote in an email, the league will leave that matter for the Blackhawks to manage.
What a load of crap. What a load of crap. Like, I'm sorry, I normally don't speak like this, and I try to be super professional. But
sometimes you can't.
But this is, we keep saying over and over again, accountability. Accountability needs to be taken. And when I've interviewed, I interviewed people from the Griffins who coached Kyle Beach, and they mentioned accountability needs to happen. Accountability. And like, they're already, not even like a month later, they're already being like, we're not accountable for this. This is a Blackhawks problem. This is not a me problem. No, it is a you problem. It's a huge you problem. Like, sit down with the Blackhawks then and discuss with the Blackhawks what they need to do, because they are under your umbrella. So figure it out. Figure it out and stop trying to pass the buck. Because guess what? That's how we got in this situation in the first place.
I'm just, the fact that it's the same, like leaving that to the Blackhawks. No, at this point, it's not left to the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks, I'm not like defending the Blackhawks, but at this point, he was no longer affiliated with the Blackhawks. I get, like, the Blackhawks need to worry and be forced to deal with each. The league is supposed to, the teams are just member organizations of this giant league. The league needs to take care of this. Like, it's just another sign of, to me, The Office and Gary Bettman. And for me, I kind of get this feeling that the league is okay with, and the 31 other owners or 32 owners are okay with Bettman just being the punching bag for this right now, which is why I don't think he'll be ousted anytime soon. But I feel he's still, this is just another sign, like, he's just out of touch and he needs to go. Like, he's been in this position for 30 years. He's overseen some good with the league, but this is as big of a black eye as any league will ever have. And he has done nothing but bumble his way through this whole thing and make mistake after mistake after mistake.
And it could have been a way to just set the tone for moving forward. Setting the tone moving forward. This is what all teams will have to do if something like this happens. They could have set the tone in that moment. And the tone that they set was, it's going to be a team by team basis, and the teams will handle it, and we won't have to be affected. And that's super disappointing. And super disappointing.
That's a nice way of putting it. Disappointing, I guess. I'm just not I don't get how it can be anything more than how they can't just say, yes, we're going to help. Because this was someone that was a big part in the NHL and then goes on and continues to be as trash can be. And then there we go. All right, I don't want to talk about him anymore because I'm going to get mad. We're going to move on to another shit show in Anaheim, but I guess Anaheim is doing the right thing with how it's going and with Bob Murray. This broke not too long ago. I'm going to read this quickly and then we'll talk about it. Ducks place EVP General Manager Bob Murray on administrative leave pending an ongoing investigation related to professional conduct. The following was a statement from Anaheim. We recently became aware of accusations of improper professional conduct against Bob Murray. After internal review, we enlisted Shepard Mullen to perform an independent investigation. Upon recommendation from their initial findings, we have decided to replace Bob on administrative leave pending final results. In the interim, Vice President of Hockey Operations and Assistant GM Jeff Solomon will assume the role of interim GM. We will have no further comment until the investigation is complete. So my first thought, and I'm going to pass it on to you, Chris. My first thought after hearing that statement, reading that statement, was taking upon recommendation of their initial findings, they placed Bob. So once they got good on them for getting an independent investigator right away, I'm hoping as soon as they heard it. But upon initial finding means where there's smoke, there's fire. And they put him on leave. So now I guess if based on that, my thought was, okay, well, they're looking to see if there's more. Otherwise, he's gone. Right?
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
There's no, to me, the only out of here based on initial findings, unless the final findings come and say, hey, some of this was fabricated or whatever it may be. We don't even know we have no idea any other details other than he's on leave because of a claim against him. And that initial findings warranted putting him on leave. But in my mind, I hear that and I'm like, well, he's gone. They're just doing this to do things, I guess, the right way or by the book or whatnot. But he's gone, right?
Yeah, look, this has been something that's been brewing for, wow, let's see. I was in California 15 years ago. So, and Murray was kind of around the organization then, obviously not in the position that he's in now. But there's always been kind of these rumblings that Bob Murray is not the nicest person to deal with in the face of the planet. And he's been known to do things that were, let's put it this way, they were really awful to other fellow people. And there's no other nicer, happy little way to put it because there's nothing happy about this.
Not at all.
I've heard stories from Eric Stevens and Helene Elliott and a number of media people of little things that would tend to make you believe that, oh, well, what we're hearing from today, oh God, this might just be the tip of the iceberg. And they just want to say, okay, enough. And whether you think that Murray should have been fired a few years ago for how he handled the on-ice product or whatever, that pales in comparison to what's going on here. And that's what has to be realized, that there was at least a pattern of, might as well just say it, ladies and gentlemen, abuse. Mm-hmm. Now, what that abuse was or how patternistic was it, we don't really know, and probably the scary thing is we'll never know.
Yeah. That actually kind of brings up a good point, whether or not you realize you brought it up, but there is a lot of emotional abuse that happens in hockey.
It comes down to that machismo effect, like mentality that we talked about last week.
Yeah, and I feel like the problem is, especially when you're in the AHL, you hear things, but like there's literally no way to investigate it. Like unless you see it with your own eyes, and even then, like it's really hard to get someone to speak to you about it. Because also if you ask the team, like, hey, I'd like to speak to so-and-so, can I get know what's going on here? It's usually like just a shut off, like nothing's happened, no further comment, we don't know. And to be fair, there's a lot of times that like the PR people actually don't know. You know what I mean? Like they don't know and they have to go ask. And
then they're told to keep their mouth shut.
Yep.
Right. And so, with certain abuses with GMs or coaches, a lot of that stuff flies under the radar because the players get in this place where they're like, we can't talk to the media, but we can talk to the media, but we can't talk to the media. But like, how is it going to be framed? How is someone going to take my quotes and stuff? And I just want to take this opportunity that if anyone that I cover wants to talk to me about any of those things, it will be word for word. It will be transcript. I'm not about to.
Almost has to be now.
Yeah, I'm not about to like mince words or cut things out unless you specifically are like
being a dick to me.
Yeah, like, hey, we shouldn't put this in there or whatnot. But like, there needs.
I feel like at this point, there's no such thing as off the record when it comes to covering this.
Right, and that's where I get kind of like, I've heard rumblings of things in the past, all off the record, completely off the record, outside of the arena, not even like when I'm in the arena, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do with this because. Like, even when I was in youth hockey, like, you hear things from around, like, the youth hockey, like, the league, like, Tier 1 Elite, and you're like, what do I even do with this? Because there's, there's no path. You know what I mean? Like, there's no path to getting a direct answer, and you're trying to, like, pound that pavement to figure it out while still, like, maintaining this, some sort of connection with the teams or the organization still, because if you lose your credentials, you don't have access. But like, what's the point of having access if you can't figure out what's going on? And it gets very like I feel like I've missed things probably, or like there's something I could have reported on and I have zero clue that I missed out on it, or maybe it was like in that weird thing because it'll be like third or fourth hand. You know what I mean? Like someone told me, or like then are telling me, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with that. Like,
and that it comes down to me, like it's a very ethical argument that you have internally with a lot of this. If I mean, I'm the type, like, there's a lot of things that we all have been told off the record, or we all hear that don't report that, don't use that. But then you run into, if you hear something major, like something along these lines with what's been coming out with this league, you have to then ask yourself, I guess, is continued access to the organization or an organization worth keeping quiet? Because then and granted, I doubt any of us have heard like major breaking, like, oh my God, type of accusations. Cause I would hope, at least knowing the two of you the way I know, you hear something like that, that's going right to publication.
That's like, how the Scaldi mess got started with Guerin in the first place. Was I stumbled onto it, and that's when it got to Kevin Allen, and then it bounced back and forth, and finally it was reported on, and then unfortunately, as everybody knows, COVID hit.
Yeah, and
the story got lost because, well, let's face it, a lot of us were trying to make sure that we didn't get, sick. I mean, for example, from my end of it, for people that don't know, in the early days of COVID, I'm starting to think this is like a montage to Red Dawn. But fortunately, my cousin succumbed to it. My aunt, his mom nearly died from it, and his dad got a pretty significant case of it himself. I mean, look, I buried my cousin in the pouring rain, legitimately, because no one else from the family tested negative for COVID yet. It was me, the pallbearer, and the casket. That was it. That was how it was, unfortunately. And to be honest, I wasn't thinking about hockey. I wasn't thinking about much of anything else. I was thinking about self-preservation at that point. And it's
100%.
It's an honest type of expression where you're sitting there and you're going, well, my God, some things are a little bit more important. And then you realize, oh God, well, this didn't go away. And not only did it not go away, but it got exponentially worse, because you have a governing body in USA Hockey who is already royally screwed up. I don't know, John Van Beesbrook, for example.
Yeah.
And then, we'll just go and hire Bill Guerin.
Right.
Come on, people. Look. It is not hard to do due diligence these days, because it may not seem everything is out there, but you don't have to go as far to find the facts as you used to.
Right.
Does it mean
you can
that
just
everything
search
is
on Twitter at the time?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I've seen it. Look, I've gotten in trouble for things I've said on Twitter 6 years ago. As a matter of fact, let's see. Oh, there's maybe a certain. Oh, Jason Garrison still hates my guts. Because I'm the one that outed him when he was wearing thermoblades and he got injured. I mean, there's things like that, but thankfully those are things that are way more trivial than what is going on right now.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Cool.
I just think also, I mean, yeah, like I'm like giving the writers in Pittsburgh a really hard time too, but like, how much can we take this year? Like, okay, from my standpoint, like I haven't finished grieving the loss of covering a player that died, of Matisse. I haven't finished, and I am so tired, and I'm so burnt out, and it's November 9th. This season isn't even a month in. And
literally, not even. Yeah.
Not even, yeah.
That's the scary part.
And it's just like bad news after bad news after bad news. And so like I want to cover these like good stories. I want to talk about how like Mark Delgado, I think that's how you say his name, forgive me if it's not, from the Milwaukee Admirals, is like a power play wizard. And how, like Jalen Chatfield has 3 goals in 3 games, and they're all beautiful, like the most beautiful goals I have ever seen, so beautifully written up, and I just want to talk about all of these things, but I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired because it's just bad news after bad news, and we're just getting inundated with it. And as writers who take the job seriously, we're having to weigh all of this stuff, and like it's really tough. And I don't know how much more I can take, and I know that there are other writers who feel that way, even on the Monsters beat with me, because we're still struggling with that. But we see all these things in the NHL, and we're getting opportunities to cover them, but at the same time, like, we're just sitting there going like, since July 4th, it has just been essentially just like a shit show. And there's so many good things that have happened, but like these bad things are really bad and need to be discussed.
And that transitions into like, this isn't going to be a long show because it's another one of those like, what else? Like, there's only so much we can talk about, especially us not being in the investigation. We all know the NHL has a major problem right now. And But my thought goes like, what needs to be done to fix this? Like, obviously getting those responsible, those that hit it, those that covered it up, those that didn't say anything when they knew and they should have said something, getting those people out of the league. Like, this is, I've talked about, I'm a usual one strike and you're out type of person, depending on the situation. This is one of the situations, one strike and you're out. Like, to me, there's no forgiveness for covering any of this up, for not speaking up, for, like, I fully get when victims don't speak up. When you see something and you hear something and you know something and you don't speak up, that's when I have a major problem, because to me, you're just as guilty as the offender, because you could have put a stop to it, especially if somebody turns out ultimately to be a serial offender or multi-time, which in the case of Aldrich, it was a multi-time thing. I don't want you part of this league. I don't want you part of this sport. I know I'm not the only one who thinks this way, but what can the league actually do? What can these owners actually do? Because I've always been of this idea of like owners are best seen, not heard type of thing. But this is the case where these owners need to come out and start saying things like, we're not going to tolerate anymore. I still believe the Blackhawks need to have new ownership, but that's an argument we can debate another time. But all these other owners in this league, what can they do at this point to make sure this gets out of this game? Because I don't see this league getting back to any sort of respectability until they make a concerted effort to get this out of the game.
I have like a list.
Let's go.
Yep.
Let's go. Let's check it twice. Let's find out how all these people are naughty.
Well, I mean, obviously, the one thing is it has to be like a league-wide thing. It can't be team by team, incident by incident. Like, there's obviously gray areas, and that has to be accounted for. But there has to be something for when is it time to get the police involved? And to be honest, the police should have been involved so fast with this one. Like, if they truly wanted to just focus on winning the cup, then they should have just passed it off to the police. Like, take it. We can't deal with it. But everyone has to be involved in what's going on in the team. There needs to be so first of all, there needs to be something for captains and leadership people. There has to be something at the beginning of the season every year that they go through to remind them of what their requirement is as a member of leadership off the ice, not just on the ice. There needs to be AHL involvement with the NHL during those training camps. They need to know everything that's going on. So when their player comes down, they can assess what's going on. There needs to be like a lot of that involvement. Another thing, let's see, is, yeah, there's a hotline, but like they said, who's going to call the hotline if they don't know if it's actually like a safe space? So there needs to be like a safe, neutral party for them
that's
to
a big
go
one.
to.
Third parties, I
Third
need to be a
big.
big part of this.
Yeah, there needs to be that. And then there also needs to be like more usage of counselors and team therapists. I understand why you wouldn't have like one therapist travel around with the team, obviously, because that could be like a weird gray area. You're like getting bankrolled by the team, but like also you have to, but there should be more emphasis on, you know, going to a counselor and talking to them. And there just needs to be more training in general. What do you do in these situations? Who are you supposed to go talk to? What's the chain of command? And telling them that you should follow up, because in leadership roles, you should be following up to see what happens, not just assuming. Assuming needs to go out the door, and everyone needs to be held accountable. I have a lot more, but like you guys can keep going.
Chris, what do you got?
I mean, we have a long way to go before we even scratch the surface of what the NHL needs to start to do. First thing off, they just need to get right what they've already screwed up. First, it's like the equivalent of, okay, that we tried to put a fire out, but unfortunately we poured like napalm on it, and it got all up in our faces, and we made this so infinitely worse than we had to. So, Mike, back to your point, like about like say 5 or 6 minutes ago, where you said basically the owners were letting Gary Bettman just like sort of sit in his own juices, basically. They're just letting him basically sink himself, and Bill Daly as well to a lesser extent. Now, you can kind of see this, where the owners really are going to preserve themselves, but they're going to let guys like Colin Campbell, Bill Daly, some of the other quote unquote older guard just absolutely sink themselves here in the court of public opinion, and that will be their out. Look, even with Bob Murray now. Let's be honest. There probably was a lot going on with Bob Murray several years ago that should have been reported by the Samuelis, who are not the most outstanding people themselves. And that's kind of the irony in all of this. I mean, look, Bob Samuelis was investigated by the SEC a few times, to say the least. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said about, again, and it's going to unfortunately be a buzzword for the next, I don't know how long, ladies and gentlemen, but it is definitely going to be a lot of self-preservation to the point where it irks all of us. Yeah. And we need to fix that first. Screw your self-preservation. You need to step up and suck it up, because it's only going to get worse. I mean, before we were sitting there and putting up on a graphic that the NHL has a major problem, like it's a mad world. I mean, nobody wants to see that. It's bad enough already. There needs to be steps in place to out things now, not 5 minutes from now, not 2 days from now, not a week from now, not a month from now. Now. It's enough. I don't want to see what's going on. I mean, look, there's things in the Devils organization from 20, 30 years ago that were covered up. I mean,
how much are we going to put on the NHLPA though? Like, obviously they're not innocent in all of this because they failed. They failed the people they're supposed to protect in a big way. How much are we going to put on them? Like, are we going to start hearing more stories about these players? Do you expect more players to come out with their stories after Kyle Beach put his name on it? Like, it's just, there's this massive Pandora's box that was just opened, and we don't know what's in it. We just know more things are coming out. And I don't want to say I'm scared for what's to come, but a part of me is.
Yeah. I've wondered a lot in the past few weeks if there's value in having a third party, kind of like a Jenner and Block, come in and interview players from the past 10 years, 10, 15 years from every team. I know that's a lot. That seems kind of crazy, and then interview coaches from the time period as well as front office people, and to see if there are any issues. And everyone can be anonymous if they want to be or whatnot, but because we need to figure out if these issues are still going on with other coaches and other players and across the league, because you see, not everyone just keeps their whole team the same time. I mean, how many of the Blackhawks got spread across the entire league after 2010, after even 2013? So, I mean, that's a lot of money and a lot of time, but is it something that's worth it? Or do we just shut the door on the past, let people come forward if they want to, and then make that just active change? I don't know.
And that's where it is. That those last 3 words, I don't know. And I hate that we're in that position because none of us are experts like in this, in what to do here. Like, I'm trying to put my thoughts into words that will make sense on what I'm thinking without being as vulgar as I want to be, which is very tough for me to do right now. But this is a league that top to bottom, and not even just a league, this is a sport because it happens in youth hockey. We just saw the thing about the high school girls or high school goaltender who is a young girl playing on an all boys team getting heckled to the point the Pittsburgh Penguins have to be the shining knights, I guess, in this coming out to support. But we see this in all levels of hockey. We see racism. We just saw it in overseas. Like, we see it constantly from the fans who need to be better, from coaches who need to be better, from players who need to be better, from everyone. This is such a massive problem that it's tough for me to just say the league needs to figure it out without going, no, the sport needs to figure it out. And they need to figure out when these kids are young and most impressionable, because they learn it somewhere. People aren't born this way.
It comes from a variety of places, and that's what makes it hard to cut it. You know, like, you can't really cut it off at the head because the root of the problem comes from sometimes from home, from school, from coaches, from, you know, people that they're playing against. Like, it's like in every aspect, and it's trying to figure out how do you dig up those roots so that it can't grow, because everyone wants to cut it off at like the head. They want to say, if we do it at the NHL level, right? If you do it at the NHL level, it'll be fine, but that's not true. Like,
that's not how this works.
It'll just grow back. So it's
we've all been to high school games, and I'll say this as someone, like, I love high school hockey starts soon, and it's my favorite time of year as a journalist is covering high school hockey. High school parents are the absolute worst people on the planet because they all think their kid's the next elite hockey player, but some of the things they yell, it's just like, why are they allowed to be why are they the way that they are? And that comes down to the like that really comes down to a lot. We have to find out why these people become the way they become.
Well,
and until we do, we're not going to fix anything.
Right. And why aren't refs stopping it? Like, I'll say this, you know, when I was in high school, like, LeBron James and I are same age. We graduated the same year. And our senior year, like, I went to Walsh, he went to Hoban, he went to St. V. They were playing against Hoban, which is like their big rival. And all of us Walsh kids were there just to watch it because it was fun to watch our two hated teams play each other because they both hate each other. We had no stake in the game, you know, like, we were like, whoever loses, it's fine. But LeBron's mom got really, like, she tried to go on the court. I don't blame her, though, because somebody literally punched her son in the stomach from the other team. But the ref was like, get out right now, and kicked a bunch of other parents out, too. No problem kicking out LeBron James' mother when he was a senior in high school. So everyone around the country already knew who he was. No problem kicking her out. No problem kicking other parents out and other students out. So why isn't that happening, say, in hockey, or why isn't that happening everywhere? If the parents are being bad, kick them out. There has to, you can't just sit there and turn a blind eye and be like, oh, well, it's okay. Or like, it's a parent, I can't do anything about it. These refs have to be able to, like, know that it's okay to give a penalty because a parent won't stop, or kick the parent out, or throw a coach out because a coach is saying something. Like,
they have to show that they have the players back in some way, shape, or form. But then there's also that concern of, it doesn't matter what they do at the game. These people are still going to be around these kids at practices and at home. You can't police what happens, and it's just how it is. Like, how are we at a point where I don't want to say we're as a sport in over our heads, but it feels that way. Like it's underwater, like going down with a sinking ship. Like what? There's got to be something that could be done, but like it's weird. We have to hit it at the lower level, but at the end of the day, it does start with the top. You need USA Hockey and Hockey Canada. Like you need these major international organizations to come out and start doing something.
Well, and USA Hockey does a lot with the youth. It's top to bottom with them. They're not just, up in Olympic, like the regular Olympics. They're doing the juniors thing. They're partnered with all sorts of like midget minors and midget majors or whatever it's called now. I don't. But yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, we're going to wrap up here. It's just, I don't know. Maybe next week we get back to talking about hockey. Who knows?
We can mix it in.
We could try and mix it in. We could try. We'll try to do that. For now, it's going to be tough. We're thankful, obviously, for everybody who's tuned in, everybody who's on this journey with us, because we are just like, yeah, we're paid to report on these things. We're paid to talk about these things. But at the end of the day, we are fans of the sport, and we just want to see this game get better. We want to see people not be afraid to be themselves. We want to see people not be afraid to come forward. We want to see people held accountable, and hopefully this is the start of that happening. But we'll find out. We'll see what else is to come over the next 7 days. You can find Chris on Twitter at Chris Wassel DFS. You can find Elaine, not Aaron, at I'm a Rain Dancer. You can find me at Mike Straw Media. Make sure you are following us on Twitter, Full Press NHL, on Twitch, twitch.tv/Full Press Coverage. Until next week, we are signing off. Take care of one another and have